I've learned that people forget what I said, they'll forget what I did, but they'll never forget how I made them feel.
Welcome to the Modern Contractor Network. I'm your host, Johnny V, and this is the Modern Contract Roundtable. Today, we have a special treat. This is Nick Shackleton-Jones, and he's a hell of a lot more than a really cool name, one to definitely remember. But I'd like you to maybe share us a little bit about your background for the contractor community, because this is a very unconventional guest for us to have. But if you could, please.
Sure. People pick up sometimes on the Shackleton name because some people know he's an Arctic explorer, and I am related to this Arctic explorer guy, Shackleton. But I'm always kind of reluctant to point that out because then people expect me to have done something more adventurous with huskies, or travel to the North Pole, and I haven't done any of that. So let me say what I have done. I started my career many years ago as a psychology lecturer. That was my kind of in at the deep end experience, teaching a mix of adults and kids. Published some psychology guides, and then somebody offered to double my salary to go and work in a consulting business, helping out to design some training stuff, and I did that. And then I got picked up by the BBC, worked for the BBC for 5 years. It's kind of weird and wonderful place. And I went from the BBC to BP. 400,000 people work for BP around the world. Went back and forth from the US, mainly Houston, to the kind of the UK. And then I went into a consulting business and I set up and led a service line. So I was the one responsible for selling services into lots of different clients, big names, worked for the UN. And then from that, I was the chief learning officer at Deloitte through the pandemic. That was horrendous. I published a book called How People Learn. And now I run my own thing, Shackleton Consulting. So yeah, that's me. Good to be here.
Yeah, that's a wonderful adventure. Nick, if I could ask you maybe just to back your mic off, I'm just getting a lot of like popping.
Yeah, popping. Yeah, let me
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's perfect.
Thanks.
But yeah, that's, it's an incredible background. We really wanted to dig into something because, I spotted you on TikTok, and the type of content that you seem to be producing on TikTok is very different than what your career suggests. You get into a lot of really interesting you share a lot of very interesting perspectives on some highly controversial issues. You're not afraid to put yourself out there, but the way you put yourself out there is very very intriguing to me. And there was a video, and I want to dive into this right away because I think it's a great start, that caught my attention. Yeah. And it has really given me some hope into how to frame the type of skills that the modern contractor is trying to put out there, right? If you don't mind, I'd like to play this for you, or I'd like to get your input on what the hell you did in this video.
Well, I can tell immediately when someone is actually interested in me as a person.
Maybe, or maybe you just think you can. As we meet and shake hands, I'll be noticing your use of language so that I can match paralinguistics, intonation, for example, and speed of talking. I'll also be looking at body language so I can match posture. I'll be checking the distance between us so I can ensure that's appropriate. And I'll be making a good amount of eye contact initially because that's how you build relationships. I'll move swiftly into commenting on something about you, but nothing that could be construed as gendered. I might, for example, comment on a choice of notebook. You'll feel complimented on a personal decision that you made, and I'll ask further exploratory questions about why you made those choices, which will surface other things about you and things that you're proud of. That will enable me to kind of bridge quite seamlessly into asking a question about work, but I won't ask a regular question like, how's things going? I'll ask a question about, what are you enjoying? Because that will associate with positive affect, and it will enable you to talk about things that you're proud of and things that you enjoy doing. At no point will I talk about myself. I'll be monitoring how much space I give you in the conversation, ensuring that I don't interrupt you, ensuring that I deal with you respectfully, respect your values. I'll be looking at the emphasis that you place on different words in the conversation so that I can mirror those and explore those areas further, since they're obviously of importance to you. I don't necessarily do all of those things because I care about you deeply as a person. I do those things because I persuaded myself intellectually that it's important that people have a positive experience when they interact with me. So there is a formula to it.
Now, I know it was a little bit painful to make you watch that again, but I wanted to make sure that I could cut that in.
Yeah.
What the hell did you do there, and how did you do it?
Yeah, sure. Easy to answer. So, first off, None of that was scripted. That is literally kind of what I do when I meet people, kind of every time pretty much. So I was just kind of talking off the top of my head. And I'm often struck by how little people understand what has to go on beneath the surface. So look, I'm not a contractor, right? But imagine you're building a kitchen and the client wants it to look really clean and simple and smooth. The reality is there's all kinds of stuff that has to go on behind the scenes. There's wiring, there's plumbing, there's a massive amount of complexity. There may be kind of computer controls, but the end result is something that looks really simple and clean. And what I was trying to get across is, look, there are some people who have great social skills and they just kind of interact with people in this really sort of smooth way. But one of the things that I learned about myself is I don't have that level of kind of computer skill of interpersonal skill. Sorry, the washing machine is just going off a second.
I was wondering.
Yeah,
Continue,
it's
please.
like it has to play a little tune. Let's just let it stop. Otherwise, you get the whole
Oh, I'm
thing.
not editing this one out.
Oh no,
No,
you
no.
want the tune?
Yo, absolutely.
It's
natural,
Samsung.
please.
If you're interested, it's so delighted to have finished. Yeah. So what I was saying is, look, perhaps people can appreciate there's an art almost to making things look seamless. And if you're an extrovert, typically you have got great kind of personal skills. You can do all of that and it comes naturally. And if you're a contractor, to some extent, right, you're in a sales role. You're a craftsman, but your ability to kind of make money out of that craft is dependent on your ability to sell it as well.
Right.
And so when I was in consulting, you can come up with a brilliant design for something, a great idea, but unless you can meet somebody, shake them by the hand, interact with them in the right way, build that relationship, they're not going to buy it from you, or the relationship's going to fall apart. So not only did I have to figure out how to do that for myself, I was then responsible for training other people to be great consultants. And quite often they don't have the skills. So we had to kind of codify it and say, look, you have to do this. You have to stand this distance from people, shake their hand with the same degree of pressure that they shake your hand. Make sure you look them in the eyes, smile when they do. Don't talk over them. Men do that a lot. Once you start noticing it, you see them do it all the time.
Interesting.
And it damages your relationship with the other person. You don't realize it's happening, but if you've taken the time to figure it out, you will spot it.
Yeah, that's really interesting the way you frame all that. And so this isn't, a skill. It's a skill that you've had to develop, as if I'm understanding you correctly. And it's interesting that you say that, because this is the sort of skill that we're trying to, put out there within the modern contractor community. And I guess in a sense, I'm looking for proof that this can be learned. Now, this might get a little bit more into your expertise, but how can a contractor really pursue, learning this sort of skill when in their mind, it's something that is a gift? But is it really?
It's totally not a gift. And the funny thing is, the paradoxical thing is, if you actually learn it kind of the hard way, you can be better at it than the people who are just doing it naturally, because you notice all the kind of the small things that they don't. You notice, for example, that men statistically tend to occupy 75% of conversation in a conversation, with a woman. And people who kind of just socialize to interact in a certain way don't pick up on those small things. So how do you learn it? That was your question.
Right.
So, TikTok is great. I love TikTok. You can learn so much. People say, isn't TikTok a waste of time? But that's like saying, isn't the internet a waste of time? It depends how you use it. You follow interesting people, follow weird people. Our connection is via you thinking, well, that guy's weird, it might be worth talking to him. And that's great, because you know what that does? It pushes us out of our comfort zone, it exposes us to different perspectives. So for me, following other people who've got different perspectives, I learn a huge amount. Obviously, you can go the old school route. You can buy the books, Eric Berne, Games People Play. There's a whole reading list I can give you of different books, but a lot of it is just about getting feedback from other people and following people who can shed some light on what it is that you need to do. So yeah, but the other part of your question was, can you learn it? Absolutely, you can. Yeah, and it's just top to bottom. You have to look at every aspect of what happens when you meet another person, from eye contact to distance. The rule of thumb is matching. People like themselves. So you're looking to kind of match their behavior in the intonation of the way they talk, in their use of kind of body language, what they're excited about at that deeper level. What do they really care about? That's the kind of the key to success. And as long as you start kind of practicing it and watching yourself, you'll get better.
I feel like contractors, and thank you for that, Nick. It's really about showing up and being present. And,
Yeah.
you know, we're doing these things naturally anyways. We're picking up on these social cues. Like it's a very natural thing. You know, everything that you kind of speak about. There was a part where you said, you know, I don't care about, it's not that I care about you deeply. There's a strategic reason why you're engaging in this way. It's a very systematic sort of thing. Maybe like speak a little bit more about that if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely love to. One of the things that shocked me, I can't remember. I got a lot of reaction to that post, like 1 million views or something crazy, which I was totally expecting because it was just kind of an off the cuff comment. But one of the reactions I got most of all was, you know, you're a sociopath, you're a psychopath, you're just manipulating people. And I wasn't hurt by that. It just kind of surprised me, and it helped me to understand that, look, if you're somebody who does this naturally, the idea that you would do it painstakingly, you know, like you engineer things, seems kind of creepy in a way. But what I was trying to expose is for those people who do it naturally, for whom those skills, you know, just come easily, other people find it really tough. I found it really tough growing up. You have to learn the hard way that if you don't develop those skills, then you're going to be left out in lots of ways, commercially, socially, with opportunities. So the reason I said it's not because I care deeply about you is I exist on a spectrum. So I'm not a contractor. My dad was a mechanical engineer, though, come from a family where we're quite kind of introverted, to put it mildly. So I love craft. You know, I love thinking about things. I love, you know, focus on stuff and on ideas. I'm not somebody who cares just deeply about people. I don't jump at the opportunity to kind of socialize. And, but I care kind of intellectually about people. You know, I don't mean anybody any harm. I want people to have a good time. So what I was trying to say in that video is I'm not doing these things naturally because I suddenly feel attached or attracted to you or whatever like that. I'm doing these things systematically because I want everybody who interacts with me, you know, to have a good experience.
Good experience.
You know? Yeah.
And that's really what this is all about. It's like it almost seems that you're not engineering, or you're not manipulating the person. You seem to be engineering the circumstances or the environment, like to create a good experience. And that's for two reasons: for yourself and for the person that you're engaging with. And that's kind of something that I wanted to get through to contractors. Like, it's not a manipulative approach, thinking about it that way, so much as it is creating the environment for a good relationship to exist, and being considerate, being present at the same time. You don't have to necessarily care deeply about that person to portray empathy and to you know, empathize with that person, and to, you know, actually engage and get that conversation going in a way that it's going to be a successful experience, because that's what it is. That's what we do. At the end of the day, as a contractor, you're not just providing a simple product like your Samsung what is it, the washing machine there?
Washing machine.
Yeah. I mean, a washing machine's a washing machine. You sell a washing machine, that's it, right? But when we sell our services, we have to continually maintain a relationship with that customer for the next 2 weeks, 3 months, however long it is. And it's important to get things off on the right foot. So it's something that a lot of contractors struggle with, because they spend a lot of their time around their skill. You know, they've developed their skills for 20 years, and that seems to be the pivot point of, this is why I should be, you know, the one for you, when there's a lot more into that. And customers are very, I mean, they're people. They're no different than, you know, a friend or a neighbor's son or whatever. And what you're trying to do is create the relationship to set up a successful project through communication. The manipulative approach, or there's got to be another word for it, Nick.
Yeah.
It's not manipulation.
Yeah.
You have one in your mind, didn't you?
I don't. I think it's something about being conscious about it, I guess, as opposed to unconscious. That's, as much as anything, it's about the deliberate approach, maybe not manipulative, but deliberate.
Right. It's
Because I think
so
there was a lot of to and fro about is it manipulative or not in the comments. And I think that where we landed is it's only manipulative if you're trying to get something specific,
I like that.
I guess, kind of out of it at the end. And in a conversation, if I met this kind of young lady at a social setting, I would have, and this was the assumption a lot of people made, is that if you're putting that much effort into something, you naturally have something, what's in it for you? You know what I mean? And for me, it was like, no, 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 I just put that much effort in. I don't know. There's nothing. I'm assuming there's nothing in it for me, but, it helps me to be able to kind of fit in. I'm not going to be standing in a corner, playing with the phone. And it helps other people to have a better experience. I guess if I give you a kind of a simple example of how this applies in real life, I think I used to get pitched at a lot by people selling things. I was in these big roles with big budgets and people would come in and pitch. And the worst pitch was when somebody would just come in with everything they wanted to say and they would just offload that, dump that on you. And as a customer, you'd sit there for 45 minutes. At the end, you think, well, I'm never working with this person because they're clearly not interested in me. And in a social situation, I see that happen as well. People who've got their stories, who've got their spiel, they want to tell you about the car they drive, they want to tell you about their latest achievement, and they meet somebody and they just offload all of that stuff. But that's not a good sales approach, and it's not a good
No.
interpersonal approach. And as I'm sure if you start with what do you care about, you don't always know where that goes. Maybe you're not going to sell the thing you wanted to sell, but it's usually a better outcome than if you just kind of drive your information, you just drive your personality.
This is a tall order asking contractors to shut up. And you did a lot of talking in that video, but in doing so, what you're saying is listen, in a nutshell, listen, and you're paying attention to things like social cues and the information to understand where that person's mindset is and how they fit in, their personality and how to engage with them, what type of space you need to leave and that sort of thing. In doing so, it seems to be, okay, this in a contractor's mind or in a person's mind, it's like, this is a lot. How am I supposed to think about? How am I supposed to remember all of this? How do I do this? And I guess it's in practice, right? But if you were to teach a contractor how to do what you did daily, how would we go about it? Because it's something that I really struggle with. I mean, for one is that person that you described. The second is, how do we teach that?
Yeah.
Do you have any ideas around that?
I do. I've done it. I've had to do it, not with contractors, but with consultants. So, I used to work in consultancy, some of the, a couple of the big four. And the basic thing is you're going to take a kid out of university and they have variable social skills, believe me. I think they're getting worse. And then you're going to send them out to sell some business with some often very experienced clients. And they screw up badly. So part of my job was to take new people into my team and to train them up to do the basics. And one of the ways we used to do it was we would set up some familiar scenarios, like you're going to meet this person on a train or you're going to meet them in a pitch. And here's the background. And then you'd give them 5 minutes to do introductions and talk to the person. And we would film it and we would watch it back. The funny thing is when people watch themselves, they can generally critique themselves pretty accurately. So 80% of the criticism comes from themselves. So look, you're not always going to have a chance to do that. How helpful is that? But the sorts of things that we used to teach, the other thing is like pass the pen. You used to take a pen. This is a technique where only the person holding the pen is allowed to speak. So you play out a conversation, and when you're done talking, you hand it to the other person and then they start talking. And that helps a lot with that urgency that people have to kind of interrupt or speak over other people. That's one technique. The other is kind of looking at behavior matching. So what do you notice about the other person? Just being more curious.
Interesting.
I noticed, for example, Johnny, you use your hands a lot. So if I'm speaking to you face to face, you're out here, which is great because you're like inviting me into your space. So, I'm going to respond to that and I'm going to use gestures as well, because that's going to help build the relationship. So looking at those sorts of things. But the number one thing, the most important thing is eye contact. I lost a job once when I was younger through lack of eye contact. If you're on the spectrum, you typically it's one of the diagnostic criteria. You don't make good eye contact. And I had some feedback from it. It was 2 days worth of assessments. And right at the end, people stood in a semicircle and fired questions at me as part of the assessment. And because when I tend to think, I tend to look away, I was looking away a lot. And the recruiter came back to me with that feedback. They said, you scored number 1 in all of the psychometrics, but some of the people felt you didn't really make good eye contact at the end. I thought, wow.
That's
So,
almost
yeah,
silly
it
on
really
the
matters.
surface, isn't? But yeah, it does matter.
Yeah.
I think, in a sense, an intellect, somebody who's highly educated, doesn't feel, they feel that they can kind of fill the gap in a social environment with their intellect, but there's a lot more to it, right? Like if I come at you with facts and information, I don't necessarily need to do all this stuff that you're talking about. The contractors suffer from the same sort of thing. It's like if I come at you with all my knowledge and all my skills and I present myself to you in this, amazing way, that we don't need to do this, right? Because it's not a comfortable thing for them. They don't do it naturally. But that's something that, the eye contact thing, I do it as well. When I'm thinking, I look off to the left, it's natural, right? But there's all sorts of social cues that you can teach, foot placement, hand movement, like mirroring people. I suppose there's all sorts of things that someone can learn. I guess putting it into practice is a little daunting because it's not natural for a lot of people. But this is, I don't know how to get it through to contractors and people out there that this is the only skill that's standing in your way from being able to have a successful projects, to extract as much, you're leaving money on the table when you leave relationship on the table. You're leaving a lot of, there's a lot of situations that happen throughout a project that you're not responding to it correctly. Like in a sense, if a customer's behaving badly, it's on you. It's because you didn't manage their expectations. You didn't manage the relationship properly.
Yeah. And this, this is it's such an interesting thing. You will lose. You will lose if you don't do this stuff. I noticed in consulting, which is basically a sales-based business, we're selling stuff to people who are buying stuff, right? And it may not, it may not be kitchens, but it's ideas, similar sorts of things about how they can redesign an organization, make it better for people. But here's the stuff: you begin to realize after a while you are losing to people who have a worse solution than you, and sometimes more expensive, solution than you, one which is technically not as good, because they know how to build the relationship, and sometimes that's at a grand scale, but more often than not, it's at a small scale, because customers and clients make decisions as much as anything based on their heart, not their head. And this is why it hurts, because if you're somebody who's passionate, you're a craftsperson, you're passionate about what you do,
Yes.
you think it should be fair. You think that people should choose the best solution, and you're baffled and angered sometimes by the fact that they don't, until you just kind of accept that that's how a lot of people work. It's about the relationship. And that's the point. That's the pivot point in your career where you realize, hey, it's not enough just to focus on my craft and get better and better and better at what I do. If I want to take it to the next level, I have to focus on how I build the relationship. So that's what happened to me. I would get really angry where I knew that what I was pitching or trying to design was technically, innovative or better or more cost effective, but you will still lose to people who know how to, build that relationship and interact with people in the right way.
That was so well put. The way you described that, you're absolutely right. That has a lot to do with it. It is frustrating. It does make you angry. And in the contracting world, that's where the battle of price comes in, because you're losing to another man or woman in the construction industry, and you don't understand why. And that's where without what you're describing, or what we're trying to describe, that's where price comes in. And that's the battle. Yeah. Nobody cares about your skill. It's assumed that you have the skill. And to be quite frank, I mean, myself, when I engage with a customer, I'm going to assume that my competition has more skill than I do. It doesn't take that much, right? It's just, it's really not that impressive to people. What's impressive to people is the experience that you're providing them. The fact that they're going to pick up that phone when you call them just because you made them laugh last time, right? It's entertaining. It's fun. They know when that phone rings, it's a good feeling. I enjoy engaging with this person. They remind me of somebody. Like, you're building the type of relationship that you know your competition can't have because you've practiced these skills. So this is something I want to get out to contractors. It's not enough for you to have the skill. People are, you know, exhausted of, you know, salesy speak and marketing language and closing techniques, and people are exhausted. They just want relationships. They just want trust. And even though you're approaching it in a, you know, manipulative fashion, you're still building the framework for a relationship to exist.
Yeah.
And that is where you can extract value.
You're so right about that. And you said something there which has been my observation as well. I just want to circle back to it, which is it's about the experience that somebody has of you. And this is kind of another way of saying the same thing. The point that people miss is it's not about the solution, it's about the experience. Now, I'll give you a real example. I worked and hired lots of different consultants to actually help me at BP on different projects. But the ones that I came back to were not the ones who were necessarily technically most proficient. I mean, they were all competent, but the ones where I just enjoyed the time with them, right? Because you're going to have several meetings with this person, and there's a person who I'm working with right now who used to work in that role. And what it was, every time I had a meeting with this person, they were upbeat, they were positive, they would bring enthusiasm, and the work needs to get done one way or another. But if you feel like every meeting with this person is going to be, you know, a good experience, you want to work with them again. Yeah. And that becomes a huge differentiator, because that's what you remember. I think it's one of my favorite quotes is from Maya Angelou, who says, you know, I know I've learned that people forget what I said, they'll forget what I did, but they'll never forget how I made them feel, you know, and that's what it's all about. Are you going to make, this is why I made this video. It's like, how are you going to make this person feel, you know, great about the meeting they had with you, you know, be memorable, leave some kind of a positive impression, because that's what they'll remember. And the answer is you can engineer that. To your first point, Johnny, you can learn how to do that. You know, you just have to pull all the right levers. Yeah, I mean, sure, you could do that for manipulative reasons, but that's not what I'm about.
It's a power. You know, my daughter, she has this same. I'll call it a power, right? It's like a superpower.
Yeah.
She just has the ability to influence people. Now, as a child, it can be used for such great power, and it can be used for such great evil. It is an incredibly power tool. You know, that I guess, I don't know what I would call it, you know, the charismatic, the attractive personality. She just has the ability to influence the people around her, and it's damaging. It's damaging. So I'm trying to teach her that this manipulative, call it that, power that you have can be used for such good. Like, you could really elevate the people around you. You can create, you become a leader and rise people up, but at the same stroke of the pen, you can destroy people. And it's really a matter of how you use these tools. Because let's face it, you know, a lot of people out there, especially nowadays, are not responsible with their own thoughts and their own emotions. And sometimes they need to be guided. Right now, here's an opportunity to engage with somebody and to take the lead, take the responsibility, and build the framework for your relationship, and create an environment where they are pleased to be in your presence. That's what this is all about. That's what the whole modern contractor vision is about. It's not about skill. It's not about your product. It's not about your sales leads. It's not about anything like that. It's just about becoming the type of human being that is a real human, that people enjoy being in your presence. And that's where your success comes from. I'm sorry to disappoint you all. Your skill is not going to be valued to the degree that your mind thinks that it should. You're going to feel underappreciated or unappreciated. There's no satisfaction in showing off your skill. Nobody cares like you do. It sucks, but they do care about being near you. And that's where the value comes. What we're discussing here has never really been discussed. I know I'm kind of shaking things up and bringing it, to something that's right. I thought you might appreciate it because I just want to be real. I want to get down to being real about the human behavior and about how to convince contractors out there that this can be taught, and it's not evil. It's not bad. A simple thing like I have a personal code, right? My personal code is that I will not get off a phone with somebody. I don't care if it's a friend, a customer, it doesn't matter. I will not get off the phone with somebody without trying to make them laugh. Why? Right? At the beginning, middle, end, there has to be laughter. Why? Because every experience is a pleasant one, and it presents so many opportunities for you and for that person to, build a relationship that's going to be successful. And in business, a successful relationship translates directly into profits. It directly translates into no rework. Something just as stupid as simple as my deficiency rate on a project, Nick, is almost damn near zero. And people ask me why that is, and it has nothing to do with the quality of our work. Zero. It has to do with the fact that customers don't want to be wrong about me, and they don't want to disappoint me. I have had people say, it's just, I lived with it. I didn't want to bother you. What the hell? You didn't want to bother me? Like, it's within my scope. It's within my responsibility, but you didn't want to bother me to come back and fix this little detail. And like that's the power that it has in building your relationships, right?
It is. You said so many fascinating things there. I guess that the laughter one made me smile because that's exactly the approach that I advised kind of consultants with.
Really?
Was it a good movie? Was it a good meeting? It wasn't a good meeting if the other person didn't laugh. Look, we've all got serious work to do, but if at some point in that meeting, you didn't connect with somebody on that kind of a level, then you didn't do a good job. And I think maybe the best way of thinking about it is like you're an actor, because if you don't have those skills naturally, it sounds like your daughter does, then you're going to have to be a little bit of an actor if you want to win business. Because look, I now run my own small business, right? And there's broadly two approaches to winning more business. You can do the thing where you're spamming people, hitting people with lots of outbound calls or outbound mails or whatever. It's hard work, it's costly, it eats into your time to do the job. Or you can get a lot of your business through repeat business and referral. And that is built on your relationships. And in my world, the small business world, that's the better route to take. So just building good relationships with people who then talk about you and refer you on, that will do a lot of your kind of marketing for you. But in interactions between you and I, coming back to something you were talking about, it is about that curiosity about the other person. So if we take you and I, for example, if this was like a kind of a sales call, if you like, or you were a new client, I believe me, I would work everything that I can see and every element of curiosity about you. I would want to know why that guitar is hanging on the wall. I would be fascinated. I am fascinated by this setup, the brick wall. There's this whole vibe about that. I love that you've got a professional microphone. I'd want to know what kind of microphone that is. I'd want to know how long you've been doing podcasting. What's your best experience, since you've been kind of podcasting. I like your hat. I wonder where the logo comes from, and what relationship you have to that. So there's so much, even in, just what I'm seeing here, there's so much that I am, genuinely curious about. And that's a great way to start building relationships, not leading with all the stuff that you care about, but asking about the stuff that your customer, your client, or just the person you're talking to cares about.
It's such a genuine approach. I mean, as you say that, I mean, you're just pointing out details in my environment. It's the quickest, way that you could, I mean, you're observing the environment, so you're curious about these things. And even in just you speaking about them, I felt flattered in a way, right? Yeah. I mean, I have answers to all these questions.
Of course.
You've just asked some genuine curiosities, and I can go days about my guitar.
Yeah.
It just makes me want to tell you, right?
Yeah.
Which is
And I would love
interesting
to hear. And I also know that there's going to be all kinds of questions. Sorry to jump in there, but branch
Please.
off from that. Like, because what kind of music do you like? And where do our tastes overlap? And what kind of events do you go to? Do you go to music concerts? And there's such rich conversations when you actually take the time to exercise your curiosity and learn about the other person. And so, yeah.
I really want you contractors to listen to this, because this is particularly powerful. I mean, when you walk into a room, I mean, I think there's three type of personalities. That once you walk into a room with a lot of people, there's the type of personality, the introvert that just kind of tries to stay away from social interactions. Then there's the type of person that, when you're in a room, people notice, right? Then there's a type of person when you're not in a room, people notice. That is particularly powerful. You're just taking things in my environment and have genuine curiosity about it. And what you've done is engaged in conversation in a very simple way. Just genuine conversation. Now, when you approach somebody, it's like, what am I going to talk about? Like you're just overly concerned about how the conversation is going to go and how you're going to make it fluid, and how, it's daunting, but it's not. Everything's right there. Just genuine conversation starts from simple things and leads in complexity. And then there's laughter, and then there's relatability, and then it's really not that difficult. So you've just taken things in my environment, and if we were next to each other, there's even more things to talk about. So it's almost like I want to encourage contractors, like when we're saying shut up and listen, it's not only shut up and listen to the words, shut up and listen to things in the environment. On the phone call, a dog barks in the background. Have genuine curiosity, right? Ask about it. Stop selling. Start listening. Engage in genuine, regular conversation with people, because they relax and they feel more confident about themselves. They feel better about themselves. By the time you get to the close, you shouldn't have to fucking close.
Yeah.
There should be no close there. The trust should be built where that customer just feels better in your hands than anybody else, because they're not going to get that anywhere else, especially in our community, the contracting community, where everyone's trying to sell how good quality they are. Like, you've stopped all that. You've changed the entire, dialogue and brought it more about the person. So you're asking about my guitar. I could tell you about that, and I'd love to, but you flattered me, and that's more important, right? And that's kind of what I wanted to, like, you're making me think about, oh, I want to tell him about this. I want to, and I'm genuinely enjoying this conversation.
Yeah.
Outside of the fact that this is a podcast, if we stop recording, I'd continue it just the way it is. It's just interesting, right? Being in your presence, and you're half a world away.
You
didn't even have to be here.
Flattery is a superpower too, but you're absolutely right that I used to go into situations where I was pitching a solution, and I'd have, a big slide deck about what we wanted to do, and it would be some big company. And I would never have to show the slide deck, because it's exactly as you said, Johnny, is that you'd start by saying, hey, I love your cufflinks, or whatever it is. And they would tell a bit of a story, and they say, I'm a keen golfer. And you'd be like, oh, okay, where do you play? What's your handicap and whatever. And so do you find that difficult? For example, now that you're based here, where's the nearest golf course? And they'd be like, yeah. And they'd be like, when did you move here? Oh, okay. So how long have you been doing this job? I've been doing this job, I don't know, 6 or 7 years. It's like, yeah. Has it changed a lot in that time? Sure has. And we've got a whole bunch of new challenges, with this new generation of people coming in, and they're like, oh, okay, tell me more about that. That must be tough. What else stresses you out at work? And the conversation unfolds unnaturally, and for 40 minutes. And then there's a point where you say, wow, I'm really sorry I didn't get a chance to show you the pitch deck, but what can we help you with? And the person says, it's like, you don't have to close. They say, well, look, we'd really appreciate help with this and this and this, and maybe you can just come back with a quote for that. And you're like, yeah, sure. And you didn't have to show them, and frankly, they didn't really want to see all the 40 slides, whatever.
It's boring.
Yeah, it is. So that's how it should go. But I'm somebody who's an introvert by nature, you see, and as I've said before, I had to learn this hard way, but I learned it partly by watching other people who are really good at it. So I had a friend, Kenny, who sounds like he was a little bit like your daughter, in that he had this superpower. I was in a lift with him once, and I sort of stand quietly in a lift, trying not to make eye contact, as you do. He just does the opposite. He would step into the lift, and he's so full of energy, and he uses his hands like you do, and he would be saying things to people, complete strangers, like, "Oh, hey, I love your jacket. Where did you get the jacket?" Or, "That's a really interesting badge. What is that? Tell me about it." And instantly, he would just form a connection. But it took me a little while to think, look, this isn't magic, what he's doing. It's not magic. I can learn to do this. If I can overcome the cringe and my
Right.
reluctance to do that and start doing it, I can do that too. And that's what I mean. You have to be a little bit of an actor, because it may not come naturally to you, but you absolutely can, see results by just stepping a little bit outside of your comfort zone.
I love how you call it being an actor. In a sense, it is. I mean, I've always kind of said it's a dance, right?
Yeah.
It really is. It's just a back and forth dance, and in a dance, somebody has to lead.
Yeah.
It's not control; it's lead.
Yeah.
And generating the flow of the conversation, and you're speaking to something that's particularly interesting to me, because we've talked a little bit about this, but you're genuinely interested. Like, here's a charismatic individual that you're in the elevator with, and you're intrigued that, like, how are you doing this? I'm trying to disengage from conversation, and your eyes are tracking any opportunity to engage with people, and it seems intimidating. And when you're thinking in your mind, I got to learn this, and someone else is doing it naturally. I love the fact that you can, and you have. And from our very first conversation, Nick, like, I've looked at you as charismatic, and I tried to define that after we got off the phone. I'm like, so what is charisma? And I was actually literally looking up definitions. Like, I've used the word, I know what it does, I know what it means, but what I mean, kind of, but how do you define charisma, right? Because it's something I want to teach. And it the only definition I could really kind of narrow it down to is the ability to have an attractive personality. So then my thought process started to go into, okay, well then, introverted people, how do they have an attractive personality? Well, I mean, it's simple. It's by being more of themselves, right? And less of what people expect from themselves. Introverted personalities can be very attractive. There's introverted people out there that you're trying to engage with. I think if you have too much of an extrovert, or too much charisma, too much energy, that's not a good thing when you're engaging with someone, because you need to learn how to step it down and match their energy level. So a person that's an introvert has a power to be attractive to introverted people, and they can come up and come down and match the energy level of the person that they're engaging with. Like, this is a dance. So it has nothing to do with, oh, he's just naturally has the gift of the gab, or he's just a performer, because that's me. I'm a performer. I'm the guy at the campfire that pulls this thing out, right, and entertains the hell out of people. But it's not because I want to look cool. It's just I just genuinely enjoy watching people enjoy entertainment, right? So I have fun with it. But to someone else that's having a pleasant, quiet conversation there in the corner while I'm playing the guitar, and just very, uninterested in what the hell I'm doing, is engaged with, someone and having a very pleasant conversation and laughing. And they're doing the same thing. I'm doing it in a performing way, but they're performing without realizing it in a one-on-one kind of conversation. So it's like, I bring this up because, like, I need to encourage people that are even introverted, that it has nothing to do with, charisma has nothing to do, or very little to do, with your energy level and your extrovertedness. And I want to break that relationship between the two, because they're not.
You're right. And, it's if you're an introvert, you can be better. Let me
Right.
kind of explain, because so I noticed lots of interesting things about what you do. You've already talked about the hands. I love the way you use your hands because you create space and you kind of draw people into the space, but you do other interesting things. So you do bring energy into a conversation and people have an inclination to match your energy, but you're also doing something more important with that energy. You're saying to somebody, I'm enjoying being here. I love this conversation. You kind of articulated literally, but also implicitly with your energy. And a person thinks, wow, this person's enjoying being with me. This is great. People feel flattered by that. You use language better than I do as well. You vary the pace and you vary the tone. So sometimes I tend to speak sort of kind of a little bit on a level, but you are constantly picking up the space and going here and then going there and then fast and then slow. And that's great. It feels like a kind of an acrobat in a conversation. Extroverts, though, your strength is always your weakness. What is the
Right.
strength of an extrovert, and why is it a weakness? I'll tell you why. It's because they overwhelm people. And actually, you talked about charisma and analyzing what is charisma. And extrovert can be tremendously charismatic, but they tend to push themselves out at people. And your superpower as an introvert is to use some of those skills, bring the energy, bring the eye contact, but actually to just be interested in the other person, because one of the most charismatic things is when a person feels like somebody really cares, about them. And you can easily feel like an extrovert just cares about themselves, and
That's
more
right.
and more people are leading with ego, talking about themselves and what they do and whatever. And so doing what you do, which is you've got all that energy, you've got all that charisma, but you're also really attentive to the other person. What are you interested in? And, kind of compliment them on things, that is, I guess, the superpower of an introvert, to be receptive. And people love that. People love being given a little bit of space in a conversation.
It is, and like just as you described it, as an extrovert, people would think that I just naturally have the ability to intrigue people and be entertaining and that sort of thing. But what I've learned through my life, growing up, I was kind of a popular kid. I had a lot of friends, all that sort of thing. But I would always come across people that would have a lot of trouble with my personality. I speak too quickly. I'm too all about myself. Just loving myself, and it was very, I was a selfish kid growing up. I'd take the larger half of the cookie. That was the kind of kid I was, right? And I, as an extrovert, someone who present at a party, people would notice, learned that I had to dial that down.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of people out there that doesn't come across well, right? So in the same sense, someone who's introverted may have to adjust their energy level and kind of,
Yeah.
Come up. So my so-called superpower in being around crowds and that sort of thing actually served negatively in my impact with relationships with people in business.
Yeah.
So at the same level, they're two different extremes. And what we're trying to do is find a balance between intellect. And speaking to intellect, like, you've described me as an intellect. You have a vocabulary that, I could never keep up with. Incredible vocabulary. My vocabulary is my body language. And there's a balance in between. And that's what I guess, I'm not trying to portray this. We seem to be discovering it through this communication, this conversation that we're having, because you're really helping me understand and solidify what it is and how to approach this. It's that we shouldn't be trying to teach contractors or people. I say contractors because that's our audience, right? But people in general, we're not trying to make you something that you're not. We're trying to take the best part of you, right? And strike a balance and strike a chord so you can lead the dance with people. Because I feel that, 90% of people out there that you engage with haven't developed that sort of skill and don't have the authority, credibility, what's the word I'm looking for? Responsibility to lead the dance. And that's the opportunity here. If you can lead that dance, you
I love
the
that
authority.
metaphor. I love that metaphor. I think it's so apt. And I think if it's okay, I'm going to build on it. Is if you're a dancer, do you just want to be stuck doing one dance? And you probably also appreciate that, different people, need to do a different dance. If you're dancing with your grandmother, it's a different kind of dance than if you're dancing with your partner, perhaps. And so you have to be flexible to really be able to lead that dance. You have to be kind of sensitive to, the other person, and that kind of give and take in the dance is the essence to that relationship. So I think it's a great metaphor.
Yeah, and as at the risk, as somebody who can't dance, at the risk of sounding stupid, I can imagine in a dance, and leading one, it's less about having control and more about picking up the cues, the movement of your partner, and leading them in a direction that generates this kind of beautiful behavioral, art, right? And this is what engaging with a human being is. You're creating something together, right? So how do we do this? And this is why we had this unconventional podcast. This is I've seen a bunch of the podcasts and interviews you've done, and this is like completely wiping the slate clean in comparison, right?
I like that.
Are you enjoying it though?
Yeah, very much.
Yeah,
It's
wonderful.
very sad. Very sadly, honestly, sadly, I've got to jump onto some other less interesting conversation. But I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have.
Yeah, we will close this right here. Absolutely. Nick, I absolutely love to have you. I hope one day in the future we can do this again. But in the meantime, let's keep this relationship going.